Albert Koehl. Is Albert here?
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Albert Koehl. I'm an environmental lawyer and an adjunct professor of natural resources law. And I mention that only because many of our transportation choices actually do significantly affect natural resources consumption and obviously other environmental issues. I'm here on my own behalf, although I should say that in the past I have represented and advocated for various groups on transportation issues, most recently for a coalition of groups that asked the coroner to review cycling and pedestrian deaths with a view to reducing those. And one of the coalition members was a group of seniors, 300,000 strong. I'm also a board member of the Annex Residents Association. We passed a bike policy last year that actually advocates in our neighborhoods for speeds of 30 kilometers, including on Bloor Street. I certainly support the Medical Officer of Health's recommendations. I wanted to speak specifically on the speed issue, which I do support. The overview of my short presentation is that, number one, we do have to ask the right questions. Number two, listen carefully to the answers, whether they're based on research or based simply on, well, this is the way we do things. And number three, lowering speeds actually provides an opportunity for what I would call a transformational change. In other words, to try to deal with some of these problems that we seem to have run out of gas on, such as climate change, air pollution, and congestion. The Toronto Star, first on the question of asking the right questions, the Toronto Star, I don't know if anyone is here from the Toronto Star, but they asked, would you be willing to reduce your speed? And of course, the answer to that, when I voted, was about 80% of people said no. The right question, I think, for the Star to ask would be, number one, when your elderly father wants to walk to the store, do you feel anxious because of the speed of the cars and trucks that pass him is quite fast? Number two, here's another question they could have asked. As a mother pushing a baby stroller, do you feel comfortable walking on a road where motorists are going 60? Number three, I would have asked, do you feel nervous when your teenage daughter tells you she wants to cycle to her soccer practice at a local park where the speeds are 50 and 60 on the roads? Or as a parent, would you rather that a car is approaching at 50 kilometers an hour or 30 when your child unexpectedly darts into the road? So I'd say if the answers to these questions are yes, and certainly the research shows that 30 is much better for these members of the public that I've referred to, then I think we should be supporting the Medical Officer of Health's report. I think part of the problem is we've generally, and since about the 1920s, dealt with roads as being a private domain of motorists, and therefore in some ways to be served by the producers of motor vehicles. We know that in Toronto about 27% of our land is actually dedicated to roads and alleyways. What we often hear from motorists is, and I hear this on my bike sometimes, people will say, well, do you want to pay for those bike lanes? As a homeowner, I live in Bathurst and Bloor area. I pay property taxes as most people do, but I don't own a car. I use a bike, I walk, I sometimes use transit, but I pay the same as my neighbors who have 2 cars. And of course, therefore, I'm paying more than they are for our local roads than I am, because I don't cause a lot of wear and tear on the streets. So in terms of listening carefully to the answers, and of course it will be important for us to listen to the answers to the Medical Officer of Health's report, to the answers that others are giving. We know what the research says, both from this report and from the World Health Organization and others, about the benefits of slowing down, both to surviving a crash if you're hit at 30 as opposed to 50. I brought a little prop here, the 24-hour it's called, and I know one of the answers we got in terms of this report was, this is the answer about why we shouldn't reduce speeds. One of the counselors said, this is from the same people who tried to socialize the hot dog stand. Well, I would say that's not specifically an answer to the recommendation, nor is it an enlightened answer. We've heard others say, it's nuts, nuts, nuts. I'm not sure if that answers the research that shows 30 kilometers is better. And others who say, well, why not 20 or 10? Or perhaps stay on your couch. But of course, those aren't answers. Those simply say, well, this is the way it is, and aren't part of enlightened answers. I think one of the reasons, of course, that we think these speeds make sense is because that's what car makers have told us, and that's how they advertise as speeds. In my prop here, on the other...
You're at 5 minutes, if I could ask you to wrap up.
Okay, I'll wrap up, yeah. And as I say, as the prop that I brought talks about this Dodge Charger, which is a Canadian-made product. It's 292 horsepower. It goes from 0 to 107.5 seconds. So here's the question that I would ask. If you're leaving the grocery store with your milk and eggs, with your child in the back seat, is there any reason for you to go 0 to 107.5 seconds? And I think the only answer I can think of is that unless you've not paid for the goods that you've bought, or if you've robbed the store. And then finally, in terms of transportation, slower speeds allow then people to feel safe on our roads with smaller cars. Even with cars we've heard about in the past, like the Zen car, that makes people feel safe on our roads with those kinds of cars. That solves the congestion problem. We can't make our roads bigger, we can make our roads smaller. Thank you very much.